everyone, let's see what is data access object. So data access object is a design pattern that provides an abstract interface to a specific type of database. So it provides a abstract interface for a specific database, that is a data access object. It is a design pattern. So its primary purpose of DAO pattern is to separate the data access logic from the business logic of an application. So its primary purpose is to separate the data access logic from the business logic of an application. So let's see what is data access object and then business logic. Data access logic is nothing but like it is to interact with the data source. So data access logic is to interact with the data source to perform the CRUD operation, create, read, update and delete. So and then for example we can use the SQL queries to fetch user details from a database. So inserting new records like that. So this is the data access logic. And then business logic is to this will show the workflows of the how data is created, displayed, stored and changed within the application. It shows only the workflows, that is the business logic. And for example, validating user input before creating a user account. So let's see how the separation of data access logic and business logic works. So how it separates the data access logic and business logic. So DAO pattern promotes a layered architecture where data access logic resides in the DAO classes. So whereas the business logic is implementing that DAO classes like in the service classes. So, structure allows developers to change or update the data access method without affecting the business logic. That is the service class. Without affecting the service class, we can make a changes in the DAO class itself if we want to change any data access. And then DAOs are typically defined as interfaces. So DAO usually defined as a interfaces, and while the implementation of these interfaces contain all the data access logic. So example, user DAO is an interface and user DAO implementation class will implement the all the things in the from the interface. So it contains the all the data access logic. This abstraction allows the business layer to interact with the data source through a simple interface. So this abstraction allows the business layer to interact with the data source through a simple interface. So isolating it from the specifics of data access. So business logic classes calls methods of the DAO interface rather than interacting with the directly with the database. So business logic is a service class that calls all the methods on the DAO interface where we created rather than interacting with directly with the database. So we need not to directly interact with the database. Instead, we can call the methods from the DAO interface in the business logic class. So what is the flexibility is if the data source changes, like switching from a relational database to a NoSQL database, only the DAO implementation we used to know. This example, user DAO implementation. That DAO implementation needs to be modified. The business logic we used like service class that need not to be changed. So the business logic remains untouched. It is need not to change. You have to change only the DAO implementation class. So so it promotes a code reusability and reducing potential errors. So here is the example for data access logic. So it is an interface and this class user DAO is an interface. User DAO implementation class implements the user DAO interface. So this is the data access logic code. So business logic is the service class that will use the overall implementation of the data access logic. So when we want to change a data, we have to change this data access logic class alone instead of changing the business logic. So this is the key differences. So key takeaways is a user DAO implementation contains the data access logic to retrieve user details from a database as we seen before, while user service contains the business logic that may involve processing the user retrieved by the DAO. So by keeping these two layers separate, the application becomes easier to maintain, test and extend as each pod can evolve independently of other. So the structure of DAO, let's see the structure of DAO. So entity class represents the data model. We have the data model class example like user product. These are the data. So DAO interface defines the methods for interacting with the data source. Example user DAO interface that we see. So it is interact with the it is used methods for interacting with the data source. DAO implementation implements the interface. It implements this interface and contains the actual logic. This implementation class only contains the actual logic for accessing the data source. So this is the structure of DAO. So conclusion is it is modularity and a testability of application by isolating the data access layer from the business logic. So this is what a DAO explanation. I hope you can understand this well. Thank you.